The winter storm roared across the valley like a living beast, howling against every wall, rattling every window, and swallowing the countryside in a curtain of white. Ethan Walker tightened the scarf around his neck as he trudged toward his barn. The wind pushed against him so fiercely that each step felt like he was dragging an invisible weight. He had lived through harsh winters before, but something about tonight unsettled him, a cold that seeped deeper than usual, as if the land itself was warning him. The horses inside were restless. Ethan could hear their uneasy snorts even before he unlatched the heavy door. When he stepped into the dimly lit barn, a gust of icy air followed him in, making the lanterns flicker. Straw rustled under his boots as he moved from stall to stall, calming the animals with gentle pats and murmured words. He was turning to leave when a sound stopped him. Soft, fragile, not at all like the horses, a whimper. Ethan froze, every muscle alert. "Hello?" he called into the shadows. No answer, only another weak sound like someone trying to breathe through tears. He lifted the lantern higher and stepped deeper into the barn. His eyes scanned the corners, until the light caught on a shape slumped near the haystack. At first his mind didn't register it. A dress? Fabric? Snow? Then the truth struck him like a blow. It was a woman. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her. She was curled into herself, arms wrapped around her body, trembling so violently he could feel the shudders through the air. Her white dress clung to her, soaked through with melting snow. Her hair, tangled and heavy with frost, hid part of her face. When she looked up, her eyes were glassy and unfocused. "My God," Ethan breathed. "You're freezing." He touched her hand and recoiled at how icy it was. She tried to speak, lips barely moving. "Help, please." "You're safe," Ethan said immediately, shrugging off his thick coat and wrapping it around her shoulders. "I've got you. We're getting you inside." As he lifted her, the lantern light illuminated her face more clearly, and Ethan's heart jolted in shock. He knew her. Lila, his neighbor's bride. The girl who was supposed to be married just hours ago. But instead of walking down an aisle, she was dying in his barn. Ethan held her closer, shielding her from the wind as he carried her toward the house. Snow stung his face, but he didn't slow. Only one thought pounded through him. Whatever happened, he was not letting this woman die tonight. Warmth slowly replaced the deadly chill inside Ethan's living room. The fireplace crackled with fresh logs, filling the space with a soft golden glow. Ethan knelt beside the hearth, adjusting the blankets he had wrapped around Lila. Her teeth still chattered slightly, but the violent trembling had eased. Steam curled from the mug of soup in her hands, though she held it more for comfort than nourishment. Ethan watched her carefully, concern etched deep into his expression. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "Take your time. You don't have to talk until you're ready." But Lila shook her head. Her voice was faint, but filled with a desperate need to speak before her courage dissolved. "No, I have to tell you, or it will keep breaking me." She swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the warm ceramic. "I didn't come here on purpose. I didn't even know where I was running. I just had to escape." Ethan pulled a chair close, sitting where she could see him without feeling cornered. He didn't interrupt. He didn't push. He simply waited, something no one in her life had ever done for her. Lila's eyes glistened as she began. "Everyone thinks Daniel abandoned me at the altar, but that's not what happened." Ethan's jaw tightened at the mention of her fiancé. "Then what did?" "My wedding wasn't a celebration," she whispered. "It was a transaction." Ethan's breath caught. Lila clutched the blanket as though it might hold her together. "Daniel never loved me. I always suspected he didn't, but I thought maybe kindness would grow between us someday." Her voice cracked. "I thought I was entering a marriage, but I was being traded." Ethan leaned in slightly, his voice low. "Traded, Lila? What do you mean?" Her gaze drifted downward, shame darkening her expression even though the shame wasn't hers to carry. "I overheard Daniel arguing with his father this morning. They owed money, dangerous people. The wedding was supposed to pay off a portion of their debt because my family gave a dowry, but it wasn't enough. So Daniel told them." She squeezed her eyes shut as tears spilled. "He told them they could have me." Ethan's fist tightened on his knee, knuckles whitening. "Lila, that's monstrous," she finished for him. "I know." She set the untouched soup aside, hands trembling again, not from cold but from memory. When I ran, I didn't take anything. Not a coat, not shoes, nothing. I just kept running through the woods until I saw the barn light. Ethan exhaled slowly, containing the fury burning inside him. "You're not going back," he said firmly. "Not ever." Lila looked up, startled by the certainty in his voice. "But I don't want you involved." "You didn't choose any of this," he answered gently. "But I'm choosing to help." For the first time that night, Lila's tears weren't from fear, they were from relief. And as she drifted into an exhausted sleep near the fire, Ethan silently vowed that no one would ever lay a hand on her again. By dawn, the storm had settled into a gentle snowfall, leaving the world outside Ethan's farmhouse quiet and deceptively peaceful. Inside, Lila was still asleep on the couch, curled beneath quilts that nearly swallowed her small frame. Ethan, having barely slept, stood at the window sipping coffee and watching the pale horizon brighten. He hoped they'd have at least a day of peace. He was wrong. The sharp crunch of tires on frozen gravel echoed outside. Ethan's senses sharpened instantly. He set his mug down and moved to the door just as a truck skidded to a harsh stop in the driveway. The engine cut off, but the tension in the air hummed louder. Daniel Hayes climbed out. Even from a distance, Ethan saw the fury blazing in his eyes. Daniel slammed the truck door, stomping toward the porch with the swagger of a man used to intimidating others. Ethan stepped outside, closing the door firmly behind him, protectively, instinctively. "What do you want?" he asked coldly. Daniel didn't bother with pleasantries. "You know what I'm here for," he spat. "Where is she?" Ethan didn't flinch. "Safe?" Daniel scoffed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "She ran off like a stupid child. She doesn't understand the trouble she caused." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "The trouble you caused, you mean?" Daniel's mask cracked, revealing desperation beneath his anger. "You don't get it, Walker. My family is in deep. Those men, if I don't hand her over, they'll kill me. You think they won't come for you next?" "That's not my concern," Ethan replied evenly. "And Lila isn't your bargaining chip." Daniel took a step closer, jabbing a finger at Ethan's chest. "She is my fiancée. She belongs with me." Before Ethan could respond, the door behind him creaked open. Lila stood there. Her face was pale but resolute, her fingers gripping the doorframe as if it were the only thing holding her upright. The moment Daniel saw her, his expression twisted, anger, relief, and panic all blending into something ugly. "Lila," he hissed. "Get in the truck." "No." Her voice trembled, but it didn't break. "I know what you tried to do." Daniel's jaw clenched. "You don't know anything." "I heard you," she said, stepping forward despite the cold. "You were going to give me to them. Trade me like property." Daniel threw his hands up in frustration. "I had no choice. You think I wanted this? We're drowning in debt." "That isn't my burden," Lila whispered. "And I won't be your sacrifice." Ethan moved slightly in front of her. "You heard her, leave." Daniel glared at them both, eyes flicking between their defiance and the locked farmhouse door. "This isn't over," he muttered. "Those men will come looking. And when they do, neither of you will be able to stop them." He stormed back to his truck, tires spitting snow as he sped away. Lila let out a shaky breath. "He'll come back," she whispered. The days that followed moved with a gentle rhythm, slow, healing, and full of small, quiet moments that soothed wounds deeper than either of them ever admitted aloud. What began as a desperate refuge gradually transformed into something that resembled a home. Lila insisted on helping. Around the farm, despite Ethan's protests that she needed rest, she swept the floors, cooked simple meals, and even learned how to feed the horses. She moved through the house like someone trying to stitch her existence back together piece by piece. And every time Ethan watched her, he saw the transformation. Her steps grew steadier, her shoulders less tense, her eyes brighter. One morning he found her outside planting a handful of bulbs near the porch. Frost still coated the ground, sparkling like diamonds under the pale sun. "You're planting flowers in winter?" Ethan asked, leaning against the porch rail with a faint smile. Lila brushed dirt off her hands and shrugged playfully. "They're hardy ones. They'll survive. Eventually." She paused, her smile softening. "I like the idea of something growing even in cold places." Ethan's chest tightened, not with pain but with admiration. They shared meals, repaired things around the house, and occasionally exchanged stories. Lila told him about her mother's garden, her dreams of becoming a painter, the way she once thought marriage would save her from loneliness. Ethan told her about the farm he built from nothing, the quiet life he preferred, and how he'd learned to trust the silence of the land more than the noise of people. Gently, almost imperceptibly, something warm began to settle between them. One evening, while replacing broken fence boards together, Lila paused to watch the sunset streak the sky with gold and crimson. "I thought my life ended the day I left that wedding," she said softly. "But here, I feel like I'm waking up." Ethan put his hammer down. "You were never meant to live in fear, Lila." She turned to him, her eyes glistening, not with tears, but with something more hopeful. "You gave me a place to feel safe." He swallowed, suddenly aware of the weight of her gaze. "I just did what anyone should." "No," she said, stepping a little closer. "You did what no one else ever did." The air thickened with unspoken feelings, fragile yet undeniable. Ethan felt his heartbeat shift, steady and sure, like it recognized something before he could name it. But their moment shattered when headlights appeared at the end of the driveway. Two vehicles, powerful engines, dark silhouettes cutting through the dusk. Ethan's expression hardened instantly. "Lila," he murmured, stepping in front of her. "Go inside, now." She didn't argue. The warmth of the moment faded as dread settled into the air. Whatever peace they had built was about to be tested. The two black SUVs rumbled up the driveway like predators closing in on prey. Their headlights cut across the yard in long, sharp beams that made the quiet farm look suddenly foreign. Ethan's jaw tightened as he stepped forward, instinctively placing himself between Lila and the approaching danger. "Stay behind me," he whispered, though his heart pounded so loud he wasn't sure she heard him. The SUV doors opened in perfect, unsettling synchronization. Three men climbed out, large, stone-faced, dressed in heavy jackets that couldn't hide the weapons holstered beneath. The leader stepped forward with a practiced calm, his boots crunching on the frost-covered ground. "Evening," he said, voice smooth and dangerous. "We're here for the girl." Ethan didn't move. "She's not going anywhere." The man smirked, tilting his head as though studying a stubborn child. "This is between her fiancé's family and us. Step aside and we'll pretend you were never involved." Ethan's eyes hardened. "I'm involved the moment your boss tried to sell her." The men exchanged amused glances, like Ethan was a naive insect they would swat after they grew bored. Behind him, Lila clutched the porch railing. She was shaking, but there was a spark of defiance in her eyes, a spark they hadn't managed to extinguish. The leader took a step forward. "You don't want to make this messy, move." Ethan didn't budge. Instead, he lifted two fingers to his mouth and whistled sharply. From behind the barn, Ethan's two massive farm dogs, Duke and Shadow, shot forward, barking fiercely, teeth bared. The men stumbled back, startled. The dogs didn't attack, but they formed a protective line in front of Ethan, their growls vibrating through the frigid air. The leader steadied himself, scowling. "So that's how it's going to be?" "Actually," Ethan said calmly, "this is how it's going to be." A new engine roared up the driveway. Red and blue lights flashed across the snow. Sheriff Miller's truck slid to a stop. The men stiffened. The sheriff stepped out, hand resting on his holster. "Gentlemen, unless you want to spend the night in jail, I suggest you put your hands where I can see them." "That girl is ours," one of the thugs growled. "No," the sheriff replied. "She's a witness and a victim. And you're trespassing, harassing, and endangering a civilian. Hands up." Reluctantly, the men raised their hands as the sheriff moved to cuff them one by one. Their glares promised revenge, but for now they were contained. When the last SUV door slammed shut and the sheriff drove off with the criminals, the yard finally fell quiet. Lila ran to Ethan, throwing her arms around him with a sob that was part relief, part exhaustion, part release. "It's over," he murmured into her hair, holding her tightly. "You're safe." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, her breath visible in the cold air. "No," she whispered, voice trembling with emotion. "It's not just safety you, Gav.